You're on a luxury cruise ship in the middle of the Caribbean. It's 6:15 a.m. on March 24th, 1998. A father walks onto his cabin balcony, expecting to find his 23-year-old daughter Amy sleeping peacefully where he'd seen her just 45 minutes earlier. Instead, he finds an empty chair. Her cigarettes and lighter are gone. Amy Lynn Bradley has vanished without a trace from the Royal Caribbean cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas. What happened next would spark one of the most puzzling missing person cases in maritime history. A case that has haunted investigators for 27 years. A case that has generated dozens of alleged sightings across the Caribbean. A case that involves possible human trafficking, suspicious cruise ship employees, and a family that refuses to give up hope. This is the story of Amy Bradley. And after watching this, you'll understand why her disappearance remains one of the most chilling, unsolved mysteries of our time. Amy Lynn Bradley was born on May 12, 1974, in Petersburg, Virginia. She was the eldest daughter of Ron and Iva Bradley, a loving family that seemed to have everything going for them. Amy had attended Longwood University on a basketball scholarship and graduated with a degree in physical education. She was athletic, intelligent, and had her whole life ahead of her. On the day before leaving for vacation, Amy had adopted a female bulldog named Daisy. She had just moved into her new apartment and was starting a new job the following Monday after returning from the cruise. Amy was excited about her future. She had plans, dreams, and a life she was building brick by brick. The cruise was supposed to be a celebration. Ron Bradley had won an all-expenses-paid family cruise from his employer, an insurance company. The family of 4 boarded the Rhapsody of the Seas on March 21, 1998, bound for the stunning Caribbean island of Curaçao. Amy had brought 15 rolls of film with her on the trip to create a collage for her coffee table. She was documenting what she thought would be beautiful family memories. But paradise was about to turn into a nightmare. The first 2 days of the cruise went smoothly. The Bradley family explored the ship, enjoyed the amenities, and soaked up the Caribbean sun. Amy, being young and social, quickly made friends with other passengers, and even some of the crew members. Little did anyone know that these interactions would later become crucial pieces of a puzzle that investigators are still trying to solve today. On the night of March 23rd, Amy and her younger brother Brad decided to hit the ship's nightclub. After midnight, Amy and her brother headed to the ship's nightclub to go dancing. The night was alive with music, laughter, and the kind of carefree atmosphere that cruise ships are famous for. Amy was having the time of her life, dancing and socializing with other passengers. But here's where things get interesting. Among the people Amy interacted with that night was a member of the ship's entertainment band. His name was Alister Douglas, but everyone called him Yellow. Amy was last seen with Alister Yellow Douglas, a member of the Blue Orchid Band on the cruise ship. Video footage from that night shows Amy dancing with Douglas in the nightclub. To most observers, it looked like innocent fun. 2 people enjoying music and dancing on a cruise ship. The ship's door lock records show that Brad had entered his cabin at around 3:35 a.m., and Amy soon followed 5 minutes later. So we know for certain that Amy made it back to her family's cabin safely. She wasn't abducted from the nightclub. She wasn't attacked on her way back to her room. She made it home. Ron Bradley, being the protective father he was, couldn't sleep well that night. Amy's father, Ron, awoke around 6 a.m. to check on his daughter, only to find her missing from the balcony she had slept on earlier. He had seen her sleeping on the balcony chair around 5:30 a.m., but when he returned just 45 minutes later, she was gone. Here's the first red flag. Her cigarettes and lighter were also gone. This suggests that Amy didn't simply fall overboard or meet with an accident. Someone who's about to have an accident doesn't typically grab their cigarettes and lighter. This looked deliberate. It looked like Amy had gotten up and left on her own. Ron Bradley didn't panic immediately. He searched the ship himself, thinking maybe Amy had gone for an early morning walk or perhaps to get coffee. But as minutes turned into hours, the reality began to set in. Amy was nowhere to be found on a ship carrying over 2,000 passengers and crew members. Before we continue with this incredible story, I need to tell you something. What you're about to hear next will completely change how you think about cruise ship safety and the way missing person cases are handled. If you're finding this case as fascinating and disturbing as I am, make sure you're subscribed, because we're just getting started, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The Bradley family's desperate search for answers was about to hit its first major roadblock, and it wasn't what you'd expect. Bradley's family immediately reported her disappearance to the onboard crew and pleaded with crew members to keep the 2,000 passengers from disembarking the cruise and to make an announcement to assist in finding Bradley. This seems like common sense, right? Someone goes missing on your ship, you lock it down, you search thoroughly, you make announcements, you treat it like the emergency it is. But that's not what happened. However, the team at the purser's office informed them that it was too early to make a ship-wide announcement. The crew agreed to issue an announcement at 7:50 a.m. after a majority of the passengers had left the ship. Think about that for a moment. A 23-year-old woman has vanished from a cruise ship, and the crew's response is essentially, "Let's wait until most people have already left before we tell anyone she's missing." This decision would prove to be catastrophic. The delay that the crew put on the search and investigation has been said to have led to lowering the chance of finding Bradley. By the time the announcement was made, thousands of passengers had already disembarked in Curaçao. If Amy had been taken off the ship against her will, the perpetrators now had a several-hour head start and access to an entire island. Between 12:15 p.m. and 1 p.m., the cruise staff searched through the ship but could not find Bradley. But here's what makes this even more suspicious. The Netherlands Antilles Coast Guard conducted a 4-day search in the surrounding waters, but no trace of Amy was found. Not a single piece of clothing, not a personal item, nothing. For someone who allegedly fell overboard, there was surprisingly little evidence. Meanwhile, something strange was happening with the ship's band member, Yellow Douglas. Brad recalled that Douglas came up to him shortly after Bradley disappeared and said, "Hey man, I'm sorry to hear about your sister." On the surface, this might seem like a normal expression of sympathy. But remember, at this point, very few people on the ship even knew Amy was missing. How did Yellow Douglas know about Amy's disappearance so quickly? And why did he specifically seek out her brother to offer condolences? The FBI eventually became involved in the investigation, and they had some serious questions for Douglas. The FBI says Bradley was at the cruise ship disco with her brother, passengers and crew members socializing and having a great time, and Douglas admitted to flirting with Amy that night. But when pressed about his involvement in her disappearance, he vehemently denied any connection to Amy's disappearance. Here's where the case takes another bizarre turn. Just 1 month after Amy disappeared, her family traveled to Curaçao to continue searching for her. The family was approached by a cab driver who claimed to have seen Bradley while the ship was docking on March 24th. He said Bradley was running through the parking lot in search of a phone. He stated he remembered her green eyes, which were clearly described in the reward poster. But that was just the beginning of what would become a series of alleged sightings that would span decades and multiple Caribbean islands. The most disturbing of these alleged sightings came from a Navy veteran named Bill Hefner. He claimed to have met a woman in Curaçao who identified herself as Amy Bradley. According to Hefner, she told him she had left the cruise to buy drugs and was being held against her will. The implications of this statement are absolutely chilling. If true, it would mean Amy had been trafficked and was being held as a prisoner. Another alleged sighting occurred in Barbados, where Judy Maurer observed a woman who claimed her name was Amy. She appeared distressed and emotional, but her story was not verified at the time. The woman seemed to be crying for help, but before Maurer could get more information, the woman disappeared. These sightings led investigators to consider one of the most horrifying possibilities in Amy's case: the theory that she had been kidnapped and forced into human trafficking. In an interview with People magazine, Bradley's mother stated, "I remember watching people watch her admiringly," and later goes on to say, "Amy would have been a trophy." The implication is clear and absolutely heartbreaking. Amy was young, beautiful, and American, In the underground world of human trafficking, she would have been considered extremely valuable. But there were other suspicious elements on the ship that night that investigators couldn't ignore. Throughout the evening, Bradley's family was approached by the same waiter asking to pass on a note to Bradley involving an invitation for her to go drinking with him once they reached shore. Why was this waiter so persistent in trying to get Amy alone? Was this part of a larger conspiracy? Even more disturbing, the professional photographer had printed out all photos taken throughout the cruise to sell at a stall, but the family could not find any of Bradley's photos. Someone had systematically removed every single photograph of Amy from the collection. Who would do this, and why? Was someone trying to eliminate evidence of Amy's presence on the ship, or evidence of who she had been interacting with? The inconsistencies in Yellow Douglas's story also raised red flags. His account of that night differed significantly from what CCTV footage captured. When investigators compared his statements to the actual video evidence, there were discrepancies that couldn't be explained away. The evidence we've covered so far is just the tip of the iceberg. What I'm about to tell you next involves new developments that have emerged just this year, including a Netflix documentary that has brought shocking new information to light. If this case is keeping you on the edge of your seat, like it's doing to me, hit that notification bell because you need to hear what investigators have discovered in 2024 that could finally solve this 27-year-old mystery. Fast forward to 2024, and Amy Bradley's case has experienced a remarkable resurgence. Just this month, Netflix released a groundbreaking 3-part documentary series called Amy Bradley is Missing, directed by Ari Mark and Phil Lott. This isn't just another rehashing of old evidence. This documentary has uncovered new information that has investigators more hopeful than they've been in decades. One of the most significant developments involves online activity that has baffled investigators. The possibility that Amy may still be alive is supported by fresh evidence involving a pattern of IP addresses traced to Barbados, logging into the amybradleyismissing.com forum on key family anniversaries and holidays. Think about that for a moment. Someone, somewhere in Barbados, is accessing Amy's missing person website on dates that would be meaningful to her. Her birthday, family anniversaries, Christmas. Who else but Amy herself would know these dates and feel compelled to check her own missing person case on these specific days? Online investigator Anthony Willis, who launched the site in 2018, has been tracking these login patterns for years. The timing and location of these accesses are too specific to be coincidental. If this is indeed Amy, it would mean she's alive, she has internet access, and she's aware of the ongoing search for her. But here's where things get even more shocking. In September 2024, true crime investigator James Renner conducted a rare interview with Alister Yellow Douglas. For over 25 years, Douglas has largely remained silent about the events of that night. But in 2024, he finally broke his silence. According to Renner, Douglas is now an exorcist and runs a church in Grenada, serving as its reverend. The man who was once at the center of suspicion in Amy's disappearance has completely transformed his life. During this interview, Douglas maintained his innocence, as he has for decades. The FBI released him with no evidence to charge him in Amy's disappearance, and he continues to maintain his innocence. But Douglas revealed something that adds another layer of complexity to this case. He claimed that Amy had revealed details of her sexuality to him and alleged that her parents had forced her to go on the cruise. While investigator Renner describes this as a detail he doesn't believe, noting that Bradley's family was very close, it raises questions about what conversations Amy may have had that night. Douglas also addressed some of the witness testimony that has haunted him for decades. 2 women claimed they thought they saw Amy and Douglas head back up to the Viking Lounge after it closed, but Douglas denied this during his 2024 interview. The Netflix documentary also features something unprecedented: an interview with Douglas's own daughter, Amika Douglas. In an emotional moment captured on camera, Amika calls her father to ask him directly about Amy Bradley. This wasn't a setup by the filmmakers. It was something Amika felt she needed to do for herself and for Amy's family. She has spent years wondering if her father was involved in Amy's disappearance, and the weight of that uncertainty is evident in her voice. According to the documentary directors, Amika has been the recipient of significant negative treatment online from people who believe her father is guilty. She has a daughter of her own now, and she wanted to demonstrate her frustration around not being able to get clear answers from her father about that night. The documentary also explores a theory that has gained traction over the years, that Amy may have left the ship voluntarily to start a new life. This speculation was fueled by the IP address logins from Caribbean locations in the years following her disappearance. But if this is true, why hasn't Amy contacted her family? Why would she put them through 27 years of agony and uncertainty? Filmmakers Mark and Lot believe they have a strong theory about what happened to Amy, which is why they decided to make the documentary. In interviews, they've hinted that they believe Amy is still alive and that they have a good idea of where she might be. They've stopped short of revealing their complete theory publicly, but they've indicated that the evidence points to Amy being trafficked and potentially still being held somewhere in the Caribbean. The FBI continues to offer a reward of up to $25,000 for information leading to the resolution of Amy's case. Despite decades of investigation, hundreds of tips, and numerous alleged sightings, Amy Lynn Bradley remains missing. But there's another disturbing element that investigators have uncovered. The documentary reveals that cruise ship disappearances are far more common than most people realize. Amy's case is not an isolated incident. There have been numerous other disappearances from cruise ships, and the way these cases are handled raises serious questions about maritime law enforcement and cruise line accountability. The Bradley family has been outspoken about how Royal Caribbean handled the initial search and investigation. They've alleged that the cruise line failed to cooperate with their family and hindered the investigation from the very beginning. In response to a 1999 lawsuit filed by the Bradleys against Royal Caribbean, the company said it acted appropriately and responsibly at all times during the investigation. Today, Ron and Iva Bradley continue their search for their daughter. Amy's mother describes her daily routine of hoping for a sign, while her father maintains Amy's car in the garage, keeping it ready for her return. Their hope is rooted in the lack of closure and the numerous pieces of evidence that suggest Amy may still be alive. The case has also been fueled by social media and true crime enthusiasts who have brought new attention to Amy's disappearance. TikTok users and online sleuths have analyzed every piece of evidence, every witness statement, and every alleged sighting. This renewed interest has led to new tips and potential leads that investigators are still following up on. In 2024, more than ever before, Amy's family believes they're close to answers. The Netflix documentary has brought international attention back to her case, and the hope is that someone, somewhere, will recognize Amy or have information that could finally bring her home. This case perfectly demonstrates how one night can change everything. Amy Bradley went from being a young woman starting her adult life to becoming one of the most famous missing persons in the world. Her story reminds us that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places, even on a luxury cruise ship in paradise. If you want to help Amy's family find closure after 27 years, share this story. Let people know that Amy Bradley is still missing, and someone out there might have the information needed to finally bring her home. Like this video if you think Amy's case deserves more attention, subscribe for more deep dives into unsolved mysteries, and let me know in the comments what you think happened to Amy Bradley that night in 1998.